Yes, hello. Thank you for a very interesting dialogue. I'm Barbara. I'm working at the cultural department of Göteborgs. And I've been listening to what you've said about innovation and economic growth and technical innovations. But I don't really think that this is the key to why our country started to cooperate in the first place. I think it's about cultural perspective and sharing this perspective. And I would like to, if you could identify where you think that this cultural perspective is shared in few words, I would find this very
culturally. Well, that's not so easy. We're all Europeans. We're not Americans. We're not Asians. We're not Africans. That is one thing that I think religions also brought us together. The Netherlands is a mainly Protestant country, but we are even tougher Protestants than the Swedes are. We're reformerta. You know that when I like to say that when the Dutch came here to build the city, they wanted to have ordning och reda, och det skulle bli spikraka gator här i stan. Spikrak gata å ena sidan, spikrak å andra sidan. That's the way they built here, and that may be a cultural thing, but honestly, I mean, I think I think it was you, the Consul of France, who told me that globalism is not a phenomenon of today. Even in the early Middle Ages, there was globalism. There were exchanges all over Europe, and people learned the languages. They knew their languages. Look at Alexander the Great, look at the Romans. There have always been contacts between peoples. And I think in the 17th century, for the Netherlands to be in touch with either Batavia, India, Goa, Sri Lanka, Gothenburg, that was a natural thing to do. It was absolutely natural, whether it's cultural or trade or something else. I think the culture came along with the trade, and of course we had more in common with each other than we had with people in Goa. So yeah, I think that is absolutely natural, isn't it?
I would add, I think, certainly in the case of the United Kingdom and the Netherlands, we were two seafaring nations who wanted to trade. And we did a lot of that together. We competed, but we also cooperated and worked together. And then to draw on Joachim's point, Joachim was starting to talk about breeding, and breeding over the next 100 years. But the fact is, we are all, in our part of Europe, quite closely related. I mean, you and I were joking earlier, I'm part Scottish, but I also have some Dutch blood. We have, as we have moved around, connected in more ways than one.
Yes, we are very connected, I think, and that is very nice. Would you like to add something?
Maybe three little points. You said it's not innovation necessary, but it's culture. Probably it's both. When I read the book about the 400 years of German church, I found the quotation that in Gothenburg you don't write poems, but you write bills. So this is certainly only part of the truth, but probably both have their role to play. That we are close together, I think we feel with our languages, when we try to learn the language of the other, very much so, that we have common roots, that we have common cultural rules. There I would say language plays a role as well to interconnect. So there should be more Germans learning Swedish, but it would be as well nice if besides English, which is of course the first lingua franca, that other languages as a third language would play a bigger role in Sweden, that we could strengthen that. And then we feel, of course, when we have our visitors coming from Germany, if they come to Stockholm, first they want to see the city, but then they are absolutely enthralled by the big landscape of museums that we have, starting from Waldmars Öde or Tiska Galleriet to those about the city and the culture, the National Museum, and so on, St. Constance Museum. So there's so much interest and so much to offer, and people come because of that. So I think this is a very strong basis for us.
Thank you. And thank you so much for this dialogue, this talk. Tack så mycket till er alla för att ni var här och lyssnade, och tack till våra ambassadörer. Vi har en fantastisk framtid ihop dessa tre länder. Och så tack.
But I'm mostly curious because I call myself a culture student.
Yes.
And you know what that is?
Not as a technical term,
Okay.
what a culture student is, but
Do you think you're a culture student?
I don't know what your definition of culture student is.
Okay.
I usually would not call me a culture student. So this is not how I see myself. But since I don't know the label, if there's a label, but usually I would call me different names than the culture student.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the way I use art as a way of understanding myself and my life, and I use movies like this to document and experience and exchange.
Yeah.
Yes, and I found out by going into the definition of the Swedish word culture and student that I'm potentially a culture student, but that means that I have to take the responsibility to study. You know, so if you study life and culture, and one definition is me and you. If you study this, then you're a student. If you give a lot of attention to a subject, by definition, you're a student. So you're a student.
Yes, of course, in that way. And if you then can study very different subjects, then I'm, of course, as well a culture student.
Yes. Wow.
But I'm not only a culture student. That would not be my first label that or the first explanation that I would put on my life. But of course, studying culture is a very important part of it.
So now I could call you a ambassador student, maybe?
Or a bachelor in culture.
Wow.
Not a master yet.
Okay. Have you ever painted?
No, I've painted, but there I have no talent whatsoever. So if I'm a culture student, then more I'm interested in going to museums, seeing different culture through time, how people try differently to put what they see from world on the canvas, what they try to express, whether they just want to do something aesthetic or whether they want to do something provocative or impressive or expressive. This I all find very interesting. And then I ask myself, if I could do something like that, if I had a talent, what would be the subject that I would then have in mind? So these things are of interest, but in that regard, I'm really an amateur.
Okay.
But with love for the subject. But I have now
another meeting
because we have a German church now, the celebration for 400 years, and I'm on the panel. So I have to
rush.
Yes.
Okay.